Hey there everyone, welcome to the first episode of our iX Studio tutoring series for Roblox. I'm Malachi, and today we're diving into the basics to get you started. In this episode, we're laying the foundation. We'll get comfortable with Blender's interface, set it up for Roblox, and ensure you're fully equipped to make stunning 3D assets. Now, to tell a bit about myself. I've been a 3D artist for almost 4 years now, and I specialize in characters. Through my specialty, I have learned tips and tricks for every niche of 3D modeling. I've worked as an ArcViz artist, a hard surface artist, organic sculpting, hard surface sculpting, high-low poly optimization, and a bunch of other really cool things. Now before we dive into the nitty-gritty of Roblox and Blender, let's talk about why we're here. Whether you're a seasoned 3D artist or just starting out, these tutorials are crafted with one goal in mind, to help you either learn new skills or polish the ones you already have. Now here's the deal, these tutorials are not just about watching and listening. The real magic happens when you get hands-on, so I encourage you to follow along, practice what you learn, and don't hesitate to experiment. The journey starts here. Hi, now that we're inside of Blender, let's talk about the details. The default Blender setup is like this. You'll have the 3D viewport, which is where you have your 3D models and is where you will spend 90% of your time. And then you have your scene collection, which houses all of the 3D objects in your scenes. And then you have the properties tab. The properties tab has all these little sub-tabs in them, like render properties, which is where you can change your render engine and many other things. The scene tab, which holds more scene information like unit scale and a bunch of other stuff. And most importantly, the modifier tab. This is where you will add modifiers onto your 3D objects. I advise you click on the add modifier button and look through the list to see what each item does. Now, let's talk about navigation. I'm going to use an add-on called Screencast Keys, which will show you the buttons that I'm clicking. If you ever need help following along, just look in the bottom left and you'll see the buttons that I am pressing. To rotate around your 3D objects, what you can do is you can hold the middle mouse button and move your mouse left and right. This will rotate you around your object. And then if you hold shift and then middle mouse, you can pan around your object. You'll move left, right, left, right. And if you simply scroll in, you'll zoom in. It's very intuitive and you'll get used to it quickly. Now, you might notice when I zoom in, I'm not really centered on the object at which I'm trying to zoom in on, and that can be cumbersome. To solve this problem, what you can do is you can click on your object and then press period on your numpad. That will focus your view solely directly on that object, and it will help you a lot in terms of modeling. Suppose I wanted to focus on an object in the distance. I could just zoom out and pan over, but it could be very annoying to get the pivot just right. So what I can do is instead of doing that, I can just click on the object, press period, and it zooms me in exactly where I want to be. Suppose I wanted to change my pivot around to a single vertex. What I could do is I could press tab to enter edit mode, and then press 1 to enter vertex select mode, and then click on a vertex, and then press period on my numpad. That'll focus me around a single vertex. Same thing goes with edges and faces. In edit mode, there are 3 types of selections. You have vertex selection 1, edge selection 2, and face selection 3. You can use each of these in their own individual ways. Suppose I'm in face select mode and I click on a face, I can press E to extrude the entire face. If I'm in edge select mode, I can press E to extrude, and I'll extrude an edge. If I'm in vertex select mode, I can press E to extrude, and it'll extrude out a single line. The differences between object and edit mode. Object mode is for positioning your objects. You can move them left and right, up, down, left, right, rotate them around, all sorts of ways. Edit mode is for moving vertices and polygons. Now it's time to talk about the panels. In Blender, you have the basic viewport, which consists of the 3D viewport, the scene properties, and the object modifier tab. But suppose you might need extra screen real estate. What you can do is you can go to the top left of the 3D viewport and click and drag out, and you can create a second viewport. Sometimes this can be useful for modeling. Suppose you need to see your object from the left side orthographic, but you want to model in the 3D viewport. You can use it that way. Or you can use a second viewport for one of the many other tabs, such as the UV editor or the shader editor. Now if you change the viewport to the shader editor, you can see the material applied to your object. Let's change the color of this to see what it does. When you're moving the color around, you'll notice nothing's really happening in your 3D viewport. The reason for this is, you're not in material shade mode. Right now you're in matcap mode. So what you can do is you can press Z, and then move down to material preview. Now that we're in material preview, you'll notice the color changes dynamically. You can use this for coloring your objects. Then if you press Z, you can explore the other views, like the wireframe view. Wireframe view is very helpful when modeling. You should get used to it. Now that we don't need it, we want to optimize screen resources. So what we can do is we can click on the object, then close it down. When it comes to modeling, add-ons are very, 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 very important. But in the case of these tutorials, I'm going to try to use as few as possible because many add-ons are paid and it can be a lot to get into at first. For future reference though, when you do discover add-ons, the way to install them is you go to the top left, hit edit, then user preferences. And then you can click on the add-on sub menu. You can click install. You can install the zip file that you get with the add-ons. I personally use add-ons such as screencast keys, Jewelcraft, and Loop Tools. Blender importing and exporting. What you can do is you can click on your 3D object, go to the top left, File, Export. Export as FBX. I prefer to export all of my 3D models as FBX, unless required otherwise to do so. Now, suppose I wanted to import an object into my scene. I can go up to the top left, File, Import, and then choose from whatever the list, whatever file format you have, and you can import it into your scene. Shortcuts. Inside of Blender, shortcuts are very powerful. If you want to be an efficient 3D modeler, you're going to have to learn how to use shortcuts. They will save so much time. For a recap, some useful ones would be E to extrude, G to grab, R to rotate. A really cool feature that you might not notice at first is that you can bind to the different axes. You can bind a movement to either the X, Y, or Z axis, or any combination of those, and your selection will stay on that axis. Another important one is S for scaling. To select all the vertices in your object, you can press A to select everything. Suppose I wanted to scale this cube down, but have it retain its height. What I can do is I can press S, and then Shift Z to scale on everything except the Z axis. You can also do S Shift X, S Shift Y for different effects. Another useful shortcut is M for merge. Suppose I wanted to merge this face into one point. What I can do is I can press 3 to enter face select mode, and then M to merge to a point. All of the modifiers are very powerful. You have modifiers that edit the vertex and mesh data, you have modifiers that generate new geometry, and then you have modifiers that form your current geometry. And then you have physics modifiers that'll add physics to your objects. In this example, we're going to use the bevel modifier to see how it works. In the bevel modifier, you can change the amount to choose how much it bevels, then you can change the segments to show how smooth the bevel could be. Now, we can add in a subdivision modifier. The subdivision modifier makes your mesh smoother by subdividing it and adding more geo. Now, suppose we put our subdivision above the bevel, you'll notice that our object changes shape drastically. Modifier stack order matters a lot. Keep that in mind. The best part about working with modifiers is that it's very non-destructive. Suppose you don't like a change that you've made with the modifiers, you can always revert it or delete it, and you won't have to worry about undo steps. Say we want to inset a face of this triangle, what we can do is we can press 3 to select it, then I to inset, and then we can press E to extrude out. Now you might notice there's some issues here that are being caused by the subdivision modifier. These issues can be solved by adding an edge crease to the edges for which you want to change. An edge crease can be used to tighten up edges. Generally for Roblox, you're not really going to be using subdivision modifiers on your meshes, as you got to be very conservative with the poly count.